Imagine a vault so secret its contents could rewrite history, a safe locked inside Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan mansion, seized, catalogued, and then quietly buried. No official explanation, no public record, just silence. What was inside that safe has become one of the biggest unanswered questions in modern American justice, but recently a tense congressional hearing cracked that silence wide open, when one lawmaker decided to corner the FBI director with questions the Bureau never wanted on the record. What unfolded next had the entire room holding its breath. During the hearing, Congressman Ted Lieu didn't waste a second, he went straight for the heart of it.
Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. The FBI searched Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan residence, correct?
I believe that happened in 2018. I think there was 2 locations, sir.
It's 2019, and in that residence, the FBI found a safe, correct?
I don't have the catalog of evidence in front of me.
In that residence, the FBI found a safe, correct?
I'll accept your representation.
Okay. And in that safe, the FBI found topless and lewd photographs of girls, correct?
Again, sir, I'll accept your representation. I don't know.
Thank you. It was all over the media at the time. There's a New York Times article that says Jeffrey Epstein is indicted on sex charges as discovery of nude photos is disclosed, dated July 8th, 2019. And the Times reports a trove of lewd photographs of girls was discovered in a safe inside financier Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan mansion. Author Michael Wolff has conducted numerous interviews of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to play for you a video clip of what Michael Wolff said Epstein told him was in the safe and what he showed the author was in this safe. So let's please play that clip now.
Elected. I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain on the front of his pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing.
So Director Patel, I'm going to ask you a very broad and general question. As you know, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. There are, of course, photos showing Donald Trump together with Epstein, correct?
I don't have the entirety of the photographs, but I think they've been photographed in public together.
All right. Are there any photos showing Donald Trump with girls of an uncertain age?
No,
How do you know that?
because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years.
Well, you know what? That's just not true, because no one knew about the creepy birthday message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein until the Wall Street Journal disclosed it, and then all of a sudden, the Epstein estate provides it to Congress.
Well,
so certainly, you weren't there at the search. You don't know what Epstein may or may not have done with those photographs even prior to the search. Maybe someone has it. Maybe the Epstein estate has it.
You raise a great point.
So I'm going to ask you, have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to
Has the
Michael
FBI
Wolff,
asked?
but
you
the
to Michael Wolff?
FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI
So
specifically
Michael Wolff
has
has
ever.
about 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't, I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
All right, so if you could provide us an answer, that would be terrific. Sure. Well, let me ask you this question then. Have you looked at all the photos in Epstein files?
I have looked at all the information that the investigators who investigated this case have provided to run out credible leads.
And in the Epstein files, was there that creepy birthday message that Donald Trump had written to Epstein?
No, that's what I was trying to tell you. You raise a great point. The estate of Jeffrey Epstein has a voluminous amount of information that they have not released before.
Okay, so that's great. So Wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that. I'd like to move
literally
on.
not how it works.
I'm going to move on now and talk about Epstein's client list. You confirmed that exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that it exists. So I just want to ask you a simple question. Is Prince Andrew on Epstein's client list?
The material related to Prince Andrew has been made public.
Is Prince Andrew on the client list?
We have released the index of names
All right,
that were in Jeffrey Epstein's.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
The index has been released, and the index will speak for
So I'm
itself.
just going to say, America, there's a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer
Gentlemen.
whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's
Gentleman's time
client
has
list.
expired.
I
Chair
yield
now
back.
recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the director for being here and for his.
The FBI searched Epstein's Manhattan residence in 2019, he began. And in that residence the FBI found a safe. The director nodded vaguely, choosing his words with surgical caution. I don't have the catalog of evidence in front of me. Lieu pressed again. The FBI found a safe, correct? And the director, visibly uncomfortable, muttered, I'll accept your representation. The words sounded bureaucratic, but the hesitation was impossible to miss. Lieu kept going, tightening the screws. He referenced a 2019 New York Times report that detailed what the raid uncovered, a trove of explicit photographs allegedly found inside Epstein's safe. The media had described them in chilling detail, photos that raised questions about who Epstein was protecting and why the material disappeared. Then Lieu pulled out the wild card, an interview clip from author Michael Wolff, who claimed Epstein personally showed him Polaroids taken at his Palm Beach estate, images that, according to Wolff, implicated a powerful public figure with girls of uncertain age. When the clip ended, you could feel the temperature in the room drop. Lieu pulled Luke straight at the FBI director. So have you spoken with Michael Wolff? Have you subpoenaed the tapes he recorded of Epstein? The director blinked, paused, and said, I don't know. Lieu leaned forward. Would it be good for the FBI to interview him? Another pause. I'm not saying they haven't, Patel said quietly. I just don't know. It was a stunning moment, the man leading the nation's top investigative agency, admitting under oath that he couldn't say whether they'd pursued one of the most obvious witnesses in one of the most notorious criminal scandals of the century. Viewers watching live didn't need subtitles to read the subtext. Lieu wasn't just questioning evidence, he was questioning the will to investigate it all. The exchange got sharper. Lieu asked if the director had personally reviewed every photo seized from Epstein's properties. I've looked at all the information investigators provided, Patel said carefully. Translation, he'd seen what others filtered for him. Then came the bombshell follow-up. Was there a certain handwritten birthday message found among those materials? The director said no, insisting nothing like that existed in the FBI's possession. But Lieu reminded him of a discovery made not by investigators but by reporters, a birthday note from Epstein addressed to a high-profile associate, disclosed years later by a major newspaper, and then provided to Congress by the Epstein estate. That single example shattered the director's earlier defense that if anything questionable existed, it would have already surfaced. Clearly, new materials could appear long after the case was closed. And if one previously unknown document could resurface, how many others were still locked away, unseen, untouched, and unaccounted for? Lieu's tone stayed calm but relentless. Wouldn't it be reasonable, he asked, for the FBI to subpoena the Epstein estate for all remaining evidence? Patel hesitated again. The estate is under no obligation to comply, even with a subpoena. The congressman's disbelief was audible. You're the FBI, he shot back. You can subpoena the material. Patel replied flatly, that's literally not how it works. For millions watching, that exchange summed up everything people fear about selective justice. When an estate tied to one of history's most infamous offenders can simply decline to hand over potential evidence, and the FBI shrugs, it makes the idea of transparency sound like theater. Lieu wasn't satisfied, and neither was the public. He turned next to the most sensitive topic of all, the list of names. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that a client index exists, he said. Can you confirm that? Patel acknowledged the index had been released in some form. Is a certain British royal on that list? Lieu aced, the material related to that individual has been made public, the director replied, sidestepping the question. And what about others? Another dodge. The index will speak for itself. At that moment, Lieu simply looked down, shook his head, and said the line that would echo across social media within minutes. That's a huge red flag. He wasn't yelling, he didn't need to. The quiet frustration said more than outrage ever could. A government agency that can't clearly answer who appears in a list it admits exists is a government begging not to be trusted. But beyond the surface drama, this hearing revealed something much bigger, a playbook for how power protects itself. For years, transparency has been the word used to calm public anger. Officials promise openness, promise sunlight, and promise access. But when asked to show the actual documents, suddenly everything becomes classified, sealed, or under review. Lieu's questioning forced that contradiction into daylight. There are three truths this confrontation made impossible to ignore. First, evidence versus explanation. When the FBI says it reviewed what investigators provided, that's an explanation, not proof. Without the underlying files, there's no way to verify whether the investigation was thorough or selective. If material truly remains under the control of the Epstein estate, the obvious step would be to subpoena it, or seek a court order compelling production. And if that's legally impossible, the agency should show the order that makes it so. Anything less invites suspicion that the barrier is political, not procedural. Second, transparency versus real accountability. Transparency isn't about dumping files online, it's about proving to the public that every legitimate lead was pursued. Did investigators interview the journalist who said Epstein showed him compromising photos? Were recordings or notes subpoenaed? Were new witnesses ever cross-checked against prior testimonies? None of those answers were clear, and that uncertainty is what keeps conspiracy alive. Real transparency could come through redacted documents, inventory lists, or court filings explaining why certain records remain sealed. Those tools protect victims' privacy, while allowing the public to see that justice is still alive. Third, the political perimeter around justice. Once a case intersects with high office, process itself becomes political currency. Promises to release everything during campaigns morph into legalistic barriers once someone holds power. It's an old trick, pledge openness, then hide behind procedure. Lieu's reference to the late-released birthday note proved that even years later, new evidence can emerge. Which raises an uncomfortable question: if revelations still appear by accident, what does that say about what's being deliberately withheld? And that's where this story shifts from scandal to systemic warning. Because at its core this isn't only about Epstein, it's about whether powerful institutions are structurally capable of investigating their own entanglements. If an estate can hold key evidence, and the Bureau claims its hands are tied, then the structure of accountability itself is broken. Oversight in that sense isn't just a political function, it's the last firewall against amnesia. Lieu's interrogation offered a blueprint for what real oversight should look like. Ask specific factual questions. Demand written proof, not talking points. Follow up publicly when answers don't add up. He turned what could have been a routine hearing into a masterclass in precision, using calm persistence to expose the gap between what's promised and what's delivered. For viewers trying to make sense of it, the next steps are actually straightforward. Lawmakers could request a categorized inventory of every item seized from Epstein's properties: digital files, photographs, witness statements, financial ledgers, everything, with a clear note on which items remain sealed, and under what authority. They could demand copies of any motions filed to unseal or redact documents, and require the Justice Department to justify every ongoing restriction. They could insist on confirmation about whether external sources, authors, journalists, or others who claim to have first-hand material, have been contacted or subpoenaed. Those requests aren't partisan attacks, they're basic procedural hygiene. Oversight should protect survivors by anonymizing names while still revealing the scope of what was investigated. It's possible to balance privacy and transparency. Redacted summaries can conceal victims' identities while showing the pattern of inquiry. The fact that such simple accountability measures aren't already standard is itself telling. Every major scandal in modern history has followed the same pattern. The public learns a fragment, demands the rest, and gets drowned in excuses about process. Files are pending review. Subpoenas are under consideration. The clock runs out, years pass. Then one day, a journalist uncovers what officials said never existed. That's how institutional trust erodes, not through one lie but through decades of deflection. This hearing, brief as it was, offered a glimpse of how that cycle might finally be broken. When a congressman refuses to play along with polished non-answers and insists on receipts, the script flips. Suddenly those in power have to explain themselves. And the public gets a chance to see not just what's in the files, but what's missing. By the time the questioning ended, Lieu had done something rare. He reminded the country that accountability isn't loud, it's precise. Each calm follow-up, each polite, "How do you know that?" was a scalpel, not a hammer. The director's discomfort wasn't about hostility, it was about exposure. The difference between "we can't" and "we won't" became painfully clear. In the days that followed, clips of the exchange spread everywhere. Some viewers saw a hero demanding truth. Others saw another political showdown. But beneath the noise, something deeper resonated, the realization that justice only works when no one is above uncomfortable questions. And maybe that's the real story here, because in the end, this isn't about one hearing, or one file, or one estate. It's about whether the American people will keep accepting explanations without evidence. It's about whether the promise of transparency will ever match the practice of it. The safe in Epstein's mansion may be sealed, but the questions it represents remain wide open. We live in a moment where information can vanish with a signature, where investigations fade before the truth sees daylight. Oversight is the only counterweight we have, and it only works when citizens care enough to demand it. Lieu's exchange wasn't theater, it was a test. A test of whether those sworn to seek truth are still willing to face it. So here's the takeaway: if justice means anything, it has to mean transparency backed by proof. Ask for the inventories. Ask for the court filings. Ask for the motions to unseal, because until those appear, every promise of openness is just another locked safe. And if you want to keep following how these investigations unfold, if you believe that sunlight is still the best disinfectant, then help keep that light alive. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel. Hit like so the algorithm doesn't bury stories that matter. Because the truth doesn't vanish on its own, it disappears when we stop looking for it.